Welcome back to T. Shaw's Progressive Bluegrass. Thank you so much for coming back for more. We've got a really fun interview today with James Key of East Nash Grass. I've got to be honest, I got on the East Nash Grass train a little bit later than I should have. I had several very credible friends telling me about East Nash Grass for quite some time, including Brian and Sherry, who were with me when I attended my very first East Nash Grass show in October of 2023 when they opened for Yonder Mountain String Band. And it wasn't until I saw them almost a year later in September of 2024 that it just absolutely grabbed me. And of course, Nick George, the official T. Shaw's Progressive Bluegrass consultant, has been telling me about East Nash Grass for years. Don't know why it took me so long to get on board. But as they say, it's better to be late to the party than not get to the party at all. Then I bumped into James Key randomly in the audience of a Randy Steele and the High Cold Wind show back in December of 2024. And we ended up having a terrific conversation talking about everything other than East Nash Grass. And that's when I invited James to be on the podcast, and he graciously accepted. So now we're going to go to my conversation with James Key of East Nash Grass. Today I have James Key of the IBMA winning East Nash Grass. James, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Trevor. I appreciate you having me.
I'm excited to have you here. I've been really excited about where East Nash Grass has been going, especially really in the last 6 months to a year. It seems like you guys have really taken off, and I don't know the exact history, and that's what I want to ask next. Was East Nash Grass actually supposed to intentionally, we want to form a band, or did you guys kind of come together by accident?
It's funny you mentioned that. I was just having this conversation with somebody. It wasn't an accident that we got together, but it was certainly seemed like an accident that it turned into a full-time profession for us. I don't know that I ever really anticipated it doing that. I wanted a residency when I had first moved to Nashville, and I always kind of wanted to play in a bar similar to Dee's Lounge where we got started. And everybody in the band, we all knew each other just from jamming and being around the same music scene. So we knew each other and had a little bit of a musical connection there, and we just really enjoyed playing with one another. And then when we got together with me, Harry, Maddie, and Corey especially, we felt like we had a good musical chemistry, and we just enjoyed playing. And so I didn't ever think that it would turn into what it was, because each one of us has always been pulled away by other different things, whether that's different careers, different artists. It seems like every time we get a little bit of traction in the early days, someone new and famous would come along and hire out my band members.
Blast
It
those
was a constant theme,
paychecks.
especially in the yeah, and well, they were offering things that we just couldn't offer, and so it was very difficult for us to ever get it off the ground on account of that. And I felt a little hopeless about it at times, and I've certainly had my own hands in other things, so it wasn't super urgent. But then it kind of demanded um, its own presence out there on in the touring scene, and so that's kind of what happened. Um, about this is our third year with our current team, basically, as I like to call it. I don't mean our band lineup; I mean all the people behind the scenes.
Sure.
Um, and having some really great professionals working with us on our team is that's the key to any successful small business, and that's what this is. Even though it's a very different type of business, having the right teammates is everything. And so we've been able to get those right people in place that are helping us. And once we started touring, it I wouldn't say it's easy, but it certainly it seems like our name was preceding us a lot of places. We didn't realize that the live streams we were doing, particularly in the COVID era, uh, we didn't really realize that those were as far reaching as they were. Nashville was a relatively unrestricted place, as most of Tennessee was throughout the pandemic. And the rest of the world and the rest of the country wasn't so much that way. So we were able to still gather, and at least in limited numbers, sometimes with no people, whatever. I don't even remember at this point. It seems like another lifetime ago, but we were able to get together and play and broadcast it online. And we realized that we were connecting with a lot more folks once we started getting out into the world. and that shocked me as well. But it certainly helped us when we did start touring that we had a little bit of recognition in some of these faraway places.
You had mentioned the streaming, and during COVID, you did a residency for a really long time at Dee's Lounge every Monday night, if I remember
Hmm.
correctly. And that went on for,
Yeah, about 7 years.
wow,
About 7 years.
wow, a long
Yeah.
time. And that's definitely where I first came across East Nash. So it was pre-COVID when you first started. So when was the genesis that you said, "Hey, this is something we can work with, like career-wise, make this the band tour go business, so to speak."
We had by 2019 we had kind of solidified at least the four of us as far as the lineup that I mentioned with me, Harry, Corey, and Maddie. And so we knew we wanted to do something with it, so we decided to start on a record early 2020, right before the pandemic, in fact. And then we had like a few songs done. We didn't really know what to do with it. We waited and we finally decided to just move forward and put the record out with almost no release plan or anything. So our first record is a little bit more, whether it was like the business plan or the actual songs itself, I always refer to it as a little bit aimless. We were kind of just getting together and recording stuff and doing songs that we liked and things that we enjoyed, and we just kind of put the record out there, and that kind of started it off, and it just built over each year.
And that's the
And
self-titled
then
album,
yeah,
East
that one came out in
Ashgrass. Okay.
2021.
Okay.
And so after that, we started getting more and more serious every year, and then by 2022, I think it was pretty clear to us that we wanted to make it happen one day, to make the band everybody's first priority, and we didn't really know how long that would take, and it's really taken up until now, up until this last year, for it to become everybody's first priority, and I can publicly say that now that it is everyone's first priority.
I'm excited to see where you guys are going. As I mentioned in the introduction, you won the IBMA this year for New Artist of the Year. Okay. And then you've been nominated for multiple categories at Spigma this year, coming up in just next week, actually.
We have Maddie and Harry are both nominated in their respective categories. We're Instrumental Band of the Year. What the other one is? It just escaped me.
Instrumental Group of the Year and Bluegrass Entertainers of the Year.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's the one. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
looking forward to that. We're gonna go. We're gonna go to the show next weekend.
Just, getting that recognition in the industry has got to be pretty confidence inspiring that this group has wheels.
I uh, I think so. Yeah, I love Spigma. I love IBMA both. I started going to Spigma in like 2003. I started going to IBMA in about 2007, and I've been to both of them nearly every year. I can't remember a whole lot of years that I missed, because I was at IBMA at everyone in Nashville, and I think I made everyone in Raleigh.
Oh,
Dear friends that I get to run into in both of those places, and I appreciate what both the organizations do. I've never really been one that's fished for awards, though. It's unlike some of my other bandmates who are very decorated and won all different types of awards. I certainly won't turn it down, and I'm proud of it. But I think it's really just the music kind of speaking for itself, and I'm honored that folks felt compelled to nominate us for anything, and just being nominated is truly enough to make me feel good and to feel recognized. And if we win, even better, but just seeing our name on there, with all of our peers is really great for us.
you got something that's working well. Speaking of working well, when your band first came together, from the research I've done, you were actually on mandolin and Harry was on guitar. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Yes.
And what
Uh, Go ahead.
what triggered the change, or how did that progress?
In 2021, we did a show with our friend Matt Combs, who's a wonderful fiddle player, does a lot of string stuff, session guy in Nashville. He put together this. this show that we did out west, and it was just a one-off thing, and it was me, Corey, and Harry. And he asked if I would be interested in switching just for the sake of that show. He kind of put together this band. I think he was playing fiddle and Dennis Crouch was playing bass. And it was fun. It was just for a party we did in Idaho. And I'm not sure what inspired him to do it, but I think he just really liked Harry's mandolin playing. And um, so we made the switch, and I really liked it, and I think Harry really liked it. And it was easier for me as a lead singer to lead the band. I felt like playing guitar, and at that point in time, Dee's was it wasn't necessarily a revolving door, but everybody else besides me was really out touring a lot, so I often had to get subs, and it was so much easier to lead the subs and people through songs that they don't know. If I'm playing guitar, I can just kind of take the guitar and step up to the microphone and start singing. And it's just hard to do that on mandolin. It's hard to command a band in the same way. So it just kind of made sense. And Harry's such a fiery mandolin player, and he's so good that I think it improved our stage show a lot. I enjoyed playing mandolin, but I could certainly recognize that I think his playing it fit the sound that we were going for a little bit better, and it allowed me to just kind of take a step back and just play guitar, which I also love to do. Guitar was my first instrument. However, this is my first job I've ever had professionally playing guitar. Everything I did before was always playing mandolin.
Huh.
So it took a little bit of getting used to, but after we did it, I never wanted to change back. And I still play mandolin, but not a whole lot. And certainly, it was good for our sound and good for each of us.
Nobody would ever know that it wasn't exactly that way from day one. It's you guys played on a really, really tight performance. It's perfect. I can't even imagine. Really, it wasn't until I came across it in a YouTube video that I saw that. I'm like, whoa, something's
Yeah,
something's
yeah,
different in this picture.
it is, and there's sometimes I tell people that I'm playing mandolin on our first record, and they don't even realize it. And it did change our sound. You can tell there's nuances and so forth, but overall, the voices are still the same, and the songs and the type of songs we do are still the same. But any group moves through the years, and that was just a move that we made, and I think it people also seem to be entertained by everybody's versatility because I often joke that I'm the worst guitar player in the band, and I truly believe that at times because everyone in the band is a great guitar player. Even Maddie, who's not really a flat picker per se, is a great rhythm player and knows all these wonderful chords and chord substitutions that none of us know. And Corey's an amazing flat picker, and Harry's great, and Harry's got great rhythm, and Jeff Parton is an amazing flat picker. All of them have such vast music theory knowledge, and the guitar lays that part out so clearly. It's kind of like the piano in how it's laid out musically, and so it's easy for them to be able to pick it up and just really be awesome. So people have enjoyed that over the years. Like whenever we do get to switch, because each one of us plays several different instruments. We actually call it special game when we get to do it, and we switch and we play these other instruments to varying degrees of success. So like you know, all of us can play guitar
And
really
this is
well.
during a performance or on stage when you do the switch up, or is it just in
Yeah, yeah.
rehearsal or practice?
It's on stage. So we don't. We're gonna try to do it more this year. We did it at D's more than anything, though, and it's just funny because we would rotate. We're all good at playing guitar, and several of us can play mandolin, but not all of us can play banjo, and not all of us can play fiddle. And so obviously, there's varying degrees of success when we switch these instruments. But it is entertaining. I say all this because regardless, people I think um, are entertained by how much time that we've all spent on different instruments because each one of us has.
I can speak from personal experience as a super fan. I absolutely love when there's improvisation with a band that I've seen over and over and over again. It having it once in a while just randomly get completely turned on its head. It certainly excites me and motivates me to come back for more, knowing you're going to see a different show every single time.
Yeah, and I love that too, and we watch a show and see that it's something something completely different each time. I think that's entertaining because we've all been there and seen a band that gives you the same show each time. And man, that's nothing wrong with that, but it's nice to have something that just flies off. May fly off the wall. That's where great things come from, and also disasters too. And to be honest, everybody wants to see both.
Absolutely. When you get something unique, improvised, and it works, and you hit it off, I mean, that creates memories. People think back years later, man, remember that one time, and
That's true.
they're the ones that stand out long term.
Yeah,
So, including the bad ones sometimes, and
that's
if
right,
you
man.
fall on your
Yes.
face, you remember that too, like you were saying. So,
Well, everybody likes that element that gives the human element to these, super pickers. It's nice to know that everybody's human, because sometimes it doesn't seem that way when you watch these super players that can just do these amazing things.
agreed. Well, you had mentioned your first self-titled album, East Nash Grass, and then in August of 2023, you released Last Chance to Win. Now, this album you play guitar on
Hmm.
during the production. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, I'm playing guitar on all of that. I yeah, and we progressed a lot musically, and we had a little bit more direction, I guess, on that album because it was recorded in a shorter time frame, whereas the first one was recorded over the course of like nearly an entire year in 2020 because we didn't have anything else to do. And
Gotcha.
we also never knew if we would escape the pandemic. That's the part that people have forgotten so quickly. And just 5 years is when we were in the middle of the pandemic. It's easy to look back and see now how long it was going to last. It was effectively a year and a half, 2 years that things were pretty bad, but we did not know that at the time.
Well, I mean, initially
We
we all
could
thought it
not
was
see
two
the light at the end
weeks.
of the tunnel, especially at the beginning. That's true. That's what my neighbor told me. I think he was wrong.
So that album's amazing. I absolutely love Last Chance to Win, but do we have plans for
Yes,
the next
so
album?
tension and everybody had that is finished. That the third album is finished and it's in post production now. So there should be singles being released. I'm hoping by the early spring, so very very soon.
And do we have a target release date for the whole album?
I don't think I could probably say anything that would be quotable just yet. I would hope by the summer, but yeah, it's a little cloudy at the moment.
Not a worry, not a worry, but something to look forward to regardless. I'm going to pause it for just a quick minute to pay the bills.
One, two. It's a big purchase, it's a big deal. Trevor Shaw knows exactly how you feel for refinance or a new home. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan.
Hello, I'm Trevor Shaw. I'm not just a bluegrass aficionado. I'm a bluegrass aficionado that's a mortgage loan officer at Chat Mortgage in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'd be honored for the opportunity to help you get your residential mortgage loan or refinance anywhere in Tennessee and Georgia. From veterans using their hard-earned benefits to first-time home buyers needing down payment assistance to retirees finally getting the home they've always dreamed of. Call or text me today at 864-50-T-SHAW. That's 864-50-T-SHAW.
It's a big purchase, it's a big deal. Trevor Shaw knows exactly how you feel for refinance or a new home. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan.
Chat Mortgage is powered by Almeida Mortgage Corporation, NMLS number 271603. Chat Mortgage is located at 6650 East Brainerd Road, Suite 208 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Phone number 423-591-9801. Trevor Shaw, NMLS number 929381. What other plans do you have for 2025 at this point?
Well, we've got a lot of shows on the books, and some of them I would love to announce and can't yet. And some of them have been announced. The most exciting thing that I can think of that has been announced is we have our own night at the Ryman Auditorium in July. That's July 15th. It's going to be us and AJ Lee and Blue Summit. We're really excited. We've played the Ryman 3 different times in opening capacities, so this is our first night ever on our own. So that is certainly a bucket list item in general, but great thing to have on the schedule for this year. And we've also got for the
Well,
first
hey,
time.
can I just briefly interrupt?
Sure, yeah,
On the night at the Ryman, you had made a social media post because Bluegrass Night at the Ryman, for those of
yes,
us that don't know, is sponsored by Springer Mountain Farms. And
correct. The
you
chicken
had
company.
commented, looking forward to giving away chicken at the Ryman. And I can't help but envision, because you guys have a pretty good sense of humor, that of you throwing live chickens into the audience.
I would love to do something like that. The folks at Springer Mountain Farms are really nice folks, and they do a great thing for the music business. I don't know how well it would be perceived to give away chickens in any capacity other than I think they do actually they give some away, but I think they give like a gift card or something. Because we'd always joked that it would be great to like deliver some raw chicken to some folks in the audience, just right there on the spot, no cooler or anything, just bring out some dripping wet raw chicken. But I don't know. I kind of doubt that they would be super into that. When you're in the business that they are in, you have to be careful about marketing because chicken is great in general. We all love chicken, but it's also like you have to market it a certain way because there's aspects of it that are maybe kind of gross. So you have to be sensitive to that, I'm sure. I'm not in the food business, so I'm just making some general assumptions. But yes, I would love to give away live chickens, raw chickens, but however, it's probably just going to be a gift card.
Well, is it not better to ask for forgiveness than permission?
I thought about that, but I would really love to get asked back in, in the years after 2025. It took us a while to get to this point, so but you never know what other smoked or cured meats that we may give away. We don't know.
I
There's
just have to be there.
You just have to be there at the show to see because we have gave away smoked and cured meats on stage before, and it could happen again.
That's amazing. All right, and so I apologize to interrupted. I just had to ask that when we were still on the subject of the Ryman. So you said a festival is also coming up. Or
Which festival was it you said?
I don't know. Maybe that's. I
Oh,
thought you might have been
oh,
rolling into when I interrupted about chickens at the Ryman.
no, there's a bunch of great festivals that are not announced yet, and you kind of have to work with when they do their announcements for all their artists to get it out there on online or out there in the world. But what I was going to say is that we've always been kind of weekend warriors in this band, doing what we could with everybody working for other artists. And this year we're going to be putting together some 2 and even 1 3 week tours where people can see us in certain regions of the country, and we're just going to be kind of road dogging it for a couple weeks at a time, as opposed to just hitting a lot of weekend spots. So it's a little bit different format of touring than we've done in the past, but it'll give more people it'll give a wider amount of people more opportunities to see us and get us in some markets that we haven't been before. We'll be back in the Northeast a couple different times. We're going to the West Coast a couple times. We're going to Colorado a couple times. Um, so we should be able to get to just about every corner of the country this year, including some places that we have never been.
That's going to be great.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited. It's our first year of doing that format of touring, even though we've all certainly done it before. In previous years, we've all had other artist schedules and things like that to work around with our band members, and we don't have any restrictions this year. We have the ability to just to play whatever it is that we're interested in. So people will definitely be seeing more of us this year, just all over the country.
Well, I'm sure my listeners are all really excited to see you if they haven't yet. Just having the opportunity, that's terrific. Love it.
Yeah, us too.
Now,
Long time coming.
when we first spoke about you coming on the show, one of the things that I had noticed, also, I believe, via social media, that was really, really interesting, and I think to others as well, or at least I hope my listeners think it's as interesting as I do. You are, I don't know if a wildflower aficionado is the right way to put it, but you've got a green thumb and grow wildflowers, correct?
I do quite a bit. Um, yeah, I own another business besides East Nash Grass, and I've owned a few different businesses in my life. I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur. Never had a job. Um, I did get a degree from UT Chattanooga in environmental science, which helped me a little bit, but I've been growing stuff my whole life and always been self-employed for better or for worse. And that's one of the things that I like about business is it's kind of like growing things, and you learn what works and what doesn't. You have to be pretty tenacious because there's not always somebody there to help you, whether it's guiding you or help you up when you fall. And there's not always going to be somebody there to help you. And so you have to just accept things for the way that they are sometimes. But I say all this because I started out my business in the landscaping world. And that's what I did. I started mowing lawns when I was a kid, and that kind of turned into an actual business. And I did that for several years in Chattanooga, where I'm from. And I sold that business some years ago to another local company, some dear friends of mine, my good pal Danny Davis, and then I moved to Nashville. I kind of got into this similar line of work. My family had owned a farm up here for over 100 years that my grandmother had managed, and she passed away in 2017, and so that's when I assumed control of the property, and it needed a good bit of work, and we ultimately owned it several different ways, and it was getting very complicated. So to free up things for future generations, we went ahead and sold the property. However, I still work there. The folks that bought it kept me on, and they have some more resources to dedicate to the place than my family ever did, for sure. But it's basically like a big nature preserve. It's not so much a farm. People sometimes call me a farmer, and to say that I grow and persist off of the revenue of what I'm growing would not be accurate whatsoever. But it's kind of turned into this other business of mine that's led to other properties as well, just doing property management, which is what I did before when I was in the landscaping business, whether it was high-end residential or apartment complexes or facilities. I had a lot of property management experience. So when I started doing the large acreage stuff in Nashville, I certainly understood the concept of it. And a lot of it was construction based, renovating properties and so forth. And I went from having a larger team of guys, like 15 employees or so at different points in my career, to I only have four now. And so, but I manage about 900 acres with that team. And so what I'm doing is I'm managing a lot larger areas, physically larger areas than what I was doing before, with a fewer amount of people, which means that I'm having to work smart every day with my
Sure.
team, with me, whatever we're doing. So I'm basically trying to manage my human capital as well as anything that I do. And so I look at stuff to try to find ways that are win-win solutions to manage stuff cheaply and not have to expend as much human capital. And that's when I discovered growing wildflowers. So there's a lot of, I could honestly write a whole column on this, and I thought about it just because I grew up mowing lawns, being a grass whacker, as we called it in the business, but I've actually developed a pretty good amount of disdain for the zero turn mower, even though they're great and I own some and we use them in certain capacities. I feel like the zero turn mower have like it's kind of ruined the American landscape in so many ways because it's given us the ability to mow lawns really fast. And I don't know what it is with mankind's obsession with things that are neat and even and tidy. I could do an entire podcast on this. You got me going down a rabbit hole.
Well, that's okay.
But essentially it's like it's become very easy for mankind to create big smooth surfaces of big lawns that can be mowed regular. And man, that's not really super good for the environment. It's not really the way that the country naturally was when this country had a lot of grasslands and savanna and prairie and things like that covering it. And so the more that I researched this, the more I wanted to move away from having to pay guys to sit on zero turn mowers and create a dust bowl every summer, which is what ends up happening. And I get it. They have a purpose. I mean, my own lawn gets mowed here. I live in a subdivision in Nashville, and it gets mowed, of course. Like I get it. Like I'm not against them. But
Sure.
I think there's got to be a happy balance where we look at some of these things that we're mowing every week and we say, damn, do we need to mow this? I don't know that we do. What else could we do with the space? So for some of our properties, that means that we can cut hay out of it. Some of it means that we can turn it into managed grasslands in the more rural areas where we've got some good biodiversity and wildlife that will enjoy that. And in the more suburban areas, if we have a space that is maybe hard to weed eat or hard to mow or hard to access, or just doesn't need to be, but it's something that people can see a lot, that's where we started turning to wildflowers because they're easy. We also, at one of the properties I manage, we have bees. We've got a professional beekeeping service that comes and manages these. It's a very complicated thing I don't know much about. That they could also expend an entire hour on a podcast explaining to us what they do. But they've tasked me with planting more and more flowers every year. And I experiment every year. I do something different. I try different seed varieties. I try different types of wildflowers in different places and different types of terrain. And this year I did the most I've ever done. And I've also experimented with some different types of clover that bees specifically like, some heavy pollen producing types of clover. I also elected to do a lot of food plots, is what we call them, and that's where instead of having grass or areas that would get mowed every week or bush hogged every couple of months or whatever, we create these food plots, which has got different things that are edible for deer and turkey and birds and so forth. And you just leave them, you just seed it and you just let it grow. So ultimately, what you're doing is creating a habitat, creating food for wildlife as well, whether that's animals or insects, either one. And then you're also reducing your amount of labor that you're having to expend to be able to manage all this. So that's kind of a win-win that I can present to landowners and they're always happy with because they can spend a little bit of money prepping this ground, planting these
Sure.
wildflowers. And the only thing we really have to do is cut them back at the end of each year, which you can do at a variety of times. You can plant them in the fall, you can plant them in the spring. There's a few different ways to do it. We're trying it both ways. We're trying fall plantings, we're trying spring plantings. We're trying more sunflowers. I mean, we're experimenting with a lot of different things. Just to see what works and what doesn't. And each year is a little bit different. But I have gotten fairly I wouldn't say renowned for it, but the wildflowers are kind of becoming a little bit of a trademark of what I do. People seem to recognize it, particularly in the photos that I post online. And I had heard so many things from different people about how long it takes to get blooms, or you won't get blooms the first year. And I just realized I didn't, I just had to go do it for myself. And
Sure.
a lot of the stuff that people were telling me was not true because there's just not a lot of people doing this. There's just not a lot of
I,
it's only recently becoming something that's like a little bit of a popular trend, like in East Nashville and some of these more progressive areas across the country. I do see people doing it in their own subdivisions to try to encourage the bees. But in general, it's not just for bees for me. It's just so I can create big spaces that give me blooms and color and look nice without me having to spend any money or time on it. And
and not to mention fossil fuels burning with
absolutely,
yeah.
which we're still going to use some of those
Well, of
to an
course,
extent, but
but not every week
definitely
or every other week.
exactly. That's the idea. And there's a whole nother conversation with this rabbit hole we could go down about the urban heat island that's created by cutting grass every week and air quality and water retention. I mean, there's a whole lot that you can talk about it. So if you can convert any of these spaces, any square footage of these spaces into something that you're not having to weed whack or mow every week for something that's really beautiful and natural, then I think you got a pretty winning combination. I will say though, as a former landscaper, the hardest part about it is getting the damn grass whackers to not weed eat them down when they first start growing. That's an issue for me a lot of times because they look like weeds when they first start coming up. And once again, mankind loves a
People just
nice,
aren't used
smooth,
to it.
clean surface.
Yeah.
And the lawn care guys at two of my properties that they're not direct employees of mine had just absolutely ruined this stuff a time or two by not knowing what they were doing, and just trying to be helpful,
Of course,
but
they thought they were
but
doing
just
their
coming
job. Yeah.
but just coming in and weed eating them down to the dirt. happened a few different times, especially this last year. Food plots and wildflowers both. Um, but it's a learning curve, and it's something that I've just gotten into in the last 5 years, and it's been really very successful and fun. And so I'd recommend it to anybody. I've actually gave a lot of people advice on how to do it, and several people have shown me photos of the success that they've had and what it's looked like because it's not that hard, man. And I'm not such a stickler for using native species. Like a lot of people really get, insistent upon trying to make it native to whatever
Sure,
was growing in your state. If it's not going to be overly invasive, if it's not going to spread like privet or kudzu or something like that, then I don't give a damn.
sure.
I'm down to use it if it grows well in the area and we know that it's not going to spread in a crazy way that is problematic, like a Bradford pear or something.
Well,
But
privet. I've
again,
got all kinds of privet problems in my place.
that's a lot of what we
Oh,
do is managing the invasive species. So I'm definitely sensitive in that regard. But I could do a whole podcast essentially on it. But I am proud that it's become something that's kind of a signature, particularly for the people that have physically seen a lot of the properties that I manage. They often look at the orange cosmos, which are the really recognizable kind of tall ones, as kind of a trademark of a property that's managed by the J.A. Key Company. So I'm certainly proud of that, and I would recommend it to just about anybody. But having this other business, I
one last
digress with
one
all of
last
this.
question about the
Go ahead,
wildflowers.
sure.
What
Yeah,
about water management? Do you have to regularly water them, or they do pretty well
no,
on their own?
they do great, and that's what's so appealing about them. Um, is I don't know the percentage that's native, but certainly the native ones are going to do better in some of the drier conditions. They need a little water when they're coming out of the ground. When you first water them, when you first seed them, they could use a little bit of water then, and that is it. That's the only time I ever
That's
irrigate
awesome.
them. I don't do any drip, and this is coming from an irrigation contractor, because I still do manage a few irrigation systems at some of the properties across the area, and I know how to do every type of irrigation. But I try to. That's one of the things that we really like about them is because, man, in these droughts that we continuously have seen in the summers, a lot of the landscape and ornamental plants will just be withered and looking really bad, and the wildflowers are just you
Doing
know
their thing.
just blowing in the wind. And I've got a lot of pictures that back that up, where you can see how brown and dead all the trees are in the background sometimes, and the wildflowers are still blooming, still going, man. So that's just one more appeal about them. Is just there's just all the resources that we talk about that are necessary for land management. You you just have such a reduced quantity of them, and I seem to be getting more and more people in my friend group into them every year. So it's definitely something. After being a career landscaper and managing, I think we had 300 accounts or something like that when I left the landscaping business, with of course a whole team of admin folks to keep up with all of that. After managing all those lawns, to what I'm doing now.
You've had your fill.
Yeah, I don't ever want to grow grass again. And I do plant some grass in certain places, particularly if we need it for erosion control and that kind of stuff. But I've gotten away from doing any chemical spraying other than using Roundup in very limited applications in flower beds and so forth. Man, I've kind of moved away from growing grasses in a turf capacity, and I just really want to do more grassland management. And I say all this because even though it's an entirely separate business from East Nash Grass, there's a lot of ways that it connects, and I love being connected to the earth. I think that's where a lot of good inspiration to want to play music and to be an artist comes from for me, because I love to be outside, and it kind of connects me. And the four full seasons remind us of the seasons of life and the things that we go through. And I love to be able to have another way that I feel useful, where I'm not sitting in an office, and I can get out and feel like I'm helping people. And just like East Nashgrass, I have a wonderful team of folks, and I wouldn't be able to do any of it without the team. That's the most important part, most important lesson you'll ever learn in small businesses. You got to have the right team, and you got to put a good team together, and then do your best to keep them together.
That applies to life.
Yeah, man, it's so important. That's
It,
the only way you'll
we're
ever really be able to succeed in anything, I think, is to have that consistency of having the right team around you.
I'm hooked. I'm sold. I'm gonna tear up my yard this spring and plant some wildflowers.
They used to, at least in a little area, I would highly recommend it to everybody because, I have about an acre of lawn out here where I live in Old Hickory, and I'd say the HOA probably wouldn't want it if I tore up the whole thing. But I started doing little sections of it, and little sections that we were weed eating before, having to weed or spray Roundup on. That's where we started planting them, and would highly recommend it. And I just do more and more each year. And I'm got a big plot I'm doing zinnias with this year. We tried different types of sunflowers, like I mentioned, and different types of clover. And I'm actually trying a big plot at the farm in Fernville that used to be my family's of goldenrod mixed with
Ooh,
wildflowers. So
ooh.
that's a new one for me. Stay tuned to see if I did any good. It's just planted, it's already in the ground, and it's one of those planting something like that is such a time sensitive project, but it's kind of like opening a present at Christmas that you bought back 7 or 8 months prior, so you don't really even remember what's in it. It's like giving yourself a present for later. So hopefully it'll be good this season. We'll
That'd be
see, but we're
great. Yeah, I hope you
I
document
think it
that.
will. Oh, I definitely will. I mean, we put every resource into it that we could. Again, trying to at that particular property get the highest pollen producing or whatever it is that the bees prefer, and the bees evidently just go ape over this goldenrod stuff. So I tried it, and we'll see what happens.
That's awesome. It really is. I'm fascinated. And
It's
okay,
going to be cool.
and it's almost all organic, I assume. Very little chemical fertilizer, probably, or do you need any at
I
all?
I do use fertilizer on the plots, but I don't use a whole lot. I just use fertilizer when we plant it. It does not use any fertilizer as it grows.
Okay,
And the wildflowers can particularly tolerate pretty poor quality soil. Um, we just put so much time and energy into it that we did want to put down some fertilizers to give us that extra insurance that it will do good.
sure.
But in general, the wildflowers do tolerate poor quality soils, which is why so many of them are native to this area. But no water past getting them up out of the ground, which normally happens in the spring. So you typically get enough rain that like I've never really had to irrigate any of the plots that I've done. The only ones I've really ever watered have been like in small areas and right by my house, or stuff like that.
I'm stoked. I'm gonna tear into it for
It's
sure.
cool, man. I would highly recommend. Could do an entire podcast on it. And I do get asked a lot about it, so I love that there's so much interest in it.
I'm gonna have you back. So,
Absolutely.
want to get back to music just a little bit. Another thing that I know that you are participating in is you have Earl Scruggs's guitar that he played on the Flat and Scruggs at the Grand Ole Opry TV show. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, that is correct.
How did that come about?
That was a right place, right time thing for me. Um, I've been a big Flat and Scruggs fan, of course, my whole life because I'm into bluegrass. And my granddad played banjo and played guitar fingerstyle like Earl did. Learned to play, with Earl's book. And got to meet Earl a couple different times here in Nashville. He lived in Nashville. My granddad did. And even met Earl one time out at Rivergate Mall. Earl was judging a banjo contest at Rivergate Mall in the 80s.
No kidding.
Um, and met my granddad, and this would have been about 1983 or 84. I think it was 84 because Earl told him about his new line of banjos that was coming out. He had his first Earl Scruggs model. There was 1984 of them made in 1984. And Earl signed all of them on the inside label with a white pen. I have number 179. It was my granddad's. And my granddad just,
Wow.
he
I
loved
have a
Earl. And
autographed Earl Scruggs poster promoting his banjo line with Gibson.
really,
Yes.
okay.
It's autographed actually to my father, and my father didn't even know he had it.
Earl was so approachable for his entire life, man. He was a very humble guy and obviously such an important figure in our music. And so I knew that they had that guitar for sale. They listed it at a very exorbitant price that seemed to scare away most people. To be totally honest, the guitar was in terrible playing condition, and I think that's what deterred so many people with the price tag that it had, especially. It's kind of like buying a house that needs to be remodeled. A lot of people can't see past that, and I get it.
And maybe they're
I've always
asking
been,
the after remodeled price.
yeah, and they probably were. And it's another one of those things. It's a piece of memorabilia, so it's very hard to put a price comp on that. It's a very unique thing. It's one of one, so it makes sense to have a very prestigious price for something that is so documented, because there's no more documented guitar that Earl ever owned. This guitar, to give a quick history lesson, was bought brand new by Opry star Don Gibson in 1955. It is a 55 D18. Don immediately took it to Shot Jackson downtown on Broadway down there, and had Shot do some conversions or whatever you want to call it, alterations, I guess, to it. I don't know why Don did this, but it was kind of common for country stars to make their guitars kind of flashy and so forth back in those days. And so he had him thin the neck down. It's thin like a Telecaster. And in doing so, Schott was worried that it would bow up. So Schott put a truss rod in it. It has a Gibson truss rod in it. So if you look in all those Martha White videos, it's got a little white, it had a white truss rod cover in those years. And that's odd to people see
Uh,
because it's a Martin guitar. They didn't have
they
truss
didn't
rod
have
covers
truss
on.
rods. I'm gonna go back
Yeah,
and watch one after we get off this interview. I'm gonna go watch a video
yeah.
tonight.
Yeah,
Look for
so
that.
that's so it was a real working truss rod under that truss rod cover, and then it also had the big pick guard, which makes it very recognizable. That covered like literally half the top. It looks black in the Martha White black and white videos. It was a cheap plastic pick guard, but it was like a tortoise shell pick guard. So
Made
those were
for
the two
television.
things that literally and made for being on the Opry. And so Don had those things done to it, and he started playing it on the Opry, which would have been at the Ryman Auditorium in these years. And Earl evidently really liked this guitar. I don't know. He would play it backstage. I don't know what his capacity with Don Gibson was, um, but he evidently kept hounding Don to sell it to him. And finally, Don did in 1957. So that's when you started seeing that guitar show up in the Martha White shows. Is 57 and beyond. Earl basically owned it the rest of his life, other than a brief period where Larry Perkins had that guitar in the early 80s. But the guitar, to make a long story short, was in a pretty bad state of disrepair. And it had been sitting at Gruen Guitars for a long time. The Scruggs family still owned it. And it had had a few different price reductions. And I don't know. I woke up one morning and kind of felt compelled to go down there, and I looked on the website to see what they had, and I couldn't believe that they still had the guitar. And they had cut the price in half from where it started. And so I went down there and I played it, and I wouldn't say that I loved it at all because
It was in rough shape.
it was in rough shape, but I did like it a lot. And I sat and played it for probably an hour. And what kind of sold me on the guitar is, it seemed like a fairly run-of-the-mill 50s D18, and it is. But when I got up the neck and I played it above the fifth fret, like in the seventh, eighth, ninth fret, um, it had a really neat resonance up there. And that's where Earl played all that fingerstyle stuff, or at least a good bit of it. He played with a high capo position in a few different chord positions, but he played way up the neck with that thing that, capo 5, capo 7, capo 8, whatever. Um, and I could understand at that moment why he did it, because the guitar had a neat resonance up there. And that was just the moment that made me really consider it. And I talked with a good friend of mine who's owned a lot of really prestigious guitars, a guy named Bobby Wilburn, who lives down in Ringgold, Georgia. And Bobby owned a music store back in the day, and he's been a mentor of mine, a dear friend for many years. And we talked about it for about 45 minutes, and he, I wouldn't say told me to do it, but definitely persuaded me to go ahead and do it, because I had a similar experience of a pretty neat instrument that I got a chance to buy in 2020, and I didn't pull the trigger, and I regretted it because it sold almost immediately after I had the chance. And so I recognized the missed opportunity, and I just told myself I didn't want that to happen. So when I hung up the phone with Bobby, I immediately texted Ben Ritchie, who was working at Gruen Guitars, and asked what I needed to do to put a hold on that guitar because it was a Saturday afternoon. The banks were closed. And he said, nothing. It's yours until Tuesday morning. So you've got Monday to work out all the business deals or the business dealing on it. And so I had him send me the wire instructions and we took care of it. And it's been getting some pretty extensive restoration done at Hugh Hanson's shop. I'm hoping it'll be ready to go by this summer, particularly for our night at the Ryman. That's kind of
Oh, that'd be awesome.
my my deadline that I gave you because I knew it would take a long time for him to do everything that needs to be done. But we're basically going to get it where it's immediately recognizable like it was with the big pick guard, with the truss rod, all of that. And get it in really probably better playing condition than it ever was before. Um, but it was just a once in a lifetime thing that I had to do, and I've never regretted it for 1 minute after I did it. And those pieces of memorabilia, they're similar to real estate in the same capacity. And it's like sometimes when there's something really unique or there's not a good or recent price
No
comp,
comparable. Yeah.
nobody knows how to really sink their teeth into what the value is. And then when you see somebody actually spend the money on it, the FOMO sets in for everybody else. So I've had a number of folks come to me after I bought that guitar, interested in buying it, and it was used as a price comp for Lester's. Lester had a D18 that he owned that sold recently as well, and they used my guitar, the Earl guitar, as a
As the
price comp.
base. Yeah.
Basically, yeah. And so it was just the right place and the right time. I knew I would regret it. I thought that it should be played. And so that's the mission that I've been on ever since I acquired it was to get it where I can, I can play this thing and my friends can play it and we can enjoy it and the guitar can speak again. Because one day I'll be dead and gone and this guitar will still be out there. That's the beautiful thing is like the instruments are very similar to real estate, the things in real estate that we love, which is that we're just caretakers of this stuff. So it's your job to be the best steward that you can be, and then try to leave it in the best condition that you can. And so that's what I'm trying to do with that guitar. And I was very honored that the opportunity came along and that I was able to to do something with it. And we have even bigger plans, after getting it ready to play. I would love to do a record with it. We that's in the very early stages of discussion, but we would like to feature it on a recording with a lot of guests, where we can have a lot of different people get that guitar to speak, because I think it has a lot more speaking left to do.
Absolutely. Well, and it's probably too soon to tell, but this is not something you're going to tour with. This is going to be probably a Nashville special occasion only, I would imagine.
I would not limit myself to traveling with it. I just have to buy a seat in the plane if I take it anywhere.
Gotcha.
You know, um, definitely in Nashville, I will be taking it out wherever I can. But I really do want to use the guitar. That's how Billy Strings, that's how if he has to fly, he buys a seat for his guitar. And you just kind of keep it next to you at all times. And so that's kind of, where
Well,
I'm at with it. I want to use the thing.
I would think my opinion is all that this is, but that is the coolest thing ever to take a priceless vintage piece of history and bring it out to the world. Something like that should not be squirreled away in a closet for the rest of its life. That's
Well, definitely.
that's
And
awesome.
there's nothing more disappointing than seeing a priceless instrument or as a musician getting to play one and learning that it's in terrible shape and that it's, can't be played, or the real sound potential cannot be harnessed because of setup or lack of.
Yeah.
That's a disheartening thing, and I can't tell you how many times I have experienced that. Just from instruments needing to be played to really be able to get all their sound out. And that happens to them. And eventually the thing probably will be in a museum one day, and hopefully in long, long, long time from now. But that's what'll probably eventually happen to it. But for now, I think it has some more speaking left to do.
That is
So
awesome.
I was just happy to get the opportunity, and especially because I have the ability to play it locally, in the Ryman Auditorium, and so I would love to get a chance to play on the Opry with it, and hopefully that opportunity will come in the future. But that was part of my motivation to buy it, just because I do have a unique ability to be able to use it in a really cool capacity in our stage shows.
Man, that's really, really cool. Uh, I've been a Martin guy since I was a child. My father bought a Martin in '74, and especially in the bluegrass circuit today, there's so many Collings and Thompson, and a lot of the guitars that are out there have kind of taken over the scene, and you just don't see a lot of Martin guitars. It,
Yeah, you don't as much. I don't play one. I play a Santa Cruz, in fact, with East Nashgrass, and I have another couple Martins as well. But yeah,
there's a
there's just so many.
handful on the circuit, but not really.
Well, there's so many other great builders that are making guitars out there. Whereas back in Western Earl's day, they're just that just wasn't a chance, man. That wasn't an option.
Yeah,
You
Martin
know.
was it, or Gibson, I
Yeah,
guess. Yeah.
yeah. Those were your choices, and so there's been so many that have been patterned after that Martin Dreadnought, and a lot of people have done a great job with that. I certainly, am not loyal to any brand of anything, and I own Martins and Gibsons both. Love them all, but yeah, there's definitely something classic about the sound of them, man, and they're certainly a very important part of bluegrass history.
Well, you're doing the Lord's work by keeping it out in the wild, restoring it, getting it out there, and letting people hear it speak. So it's
Well, thanks,
appreciated.
man. Yeah, that's definitely what we wanted to see happen with it, and that's kind of that's what a lot of folks are telling me, that they're glad that we have that chance to be able to share it, because I think that's what that guitar deserves, and I think people will be thrilled to hear it again.
Absolutely. Well, James, it's been awesome to have you on T. Shaw's Progressive Bluegrass. I can't thank you enough. Really looking forward to watching East Nash Grass, see where it ends up. Excited to see the progress with the wildflowers. Excited to see Earl's guitar in the wild. It's just 2025 and beyond. I see nothing but big things for you guys.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Thanks for having me on here. I'm looking on here to listen now and see a lot of my mutual connections that you've had on here. So, many thanks for your time today, and I would love to do it again sometime. And appreciate the work that you're doing out there to try to talk about all the cool things and nuances of bluegrass.
We'll make it happen. Well, getting the word out. I still envisioned something like the WKRP turkey incident with the chickens at the Ryman. I think it'd be a blast, but really glad everybody tuned in today to T. Shaw's Progressive Bluegrass. I had so much fun. I hope you did too. If you liked what you heard today, please come back again next week when we continue T. Shaw's Progressive Bluegrass. Of course, the entirety of seasons 1 and 2 are both available. Go back and check out some of the older episodes. Last week was particularly fun, where we interviewed Chris Howland with Heady Wax Fiends. In my liner notes today, I'm going to feature the first video will be Working Man Blues, where James Key sits in with one of my favorite bands, Randy Steele and the High Cold Wind. This is also the night that I met James in the audience, where we connected and talked about wildflowers, talked about Earl Scruggs' guitar, and when I invited him to be on my podcast. It was later that evening that he played Working Man's Blues, and also going to share Drink Up and Go Home from that evening. Then after that, I'll be featuring Roll in My Sweet Baby's Arms from the very first time I saw East Nash Grass with Yonder Mountain String Band to close out their show. Not my best video, but I wanted to document at least one song from my first East Nash Grass show. I also learned that East Nash Grass is incredibly difficult to say fast. Try saying it 3 times in a row, twice as fast. It's really hard to do. And with that, I hope you'll stick around just a moment longer for a quick message from our sponsor, which is me.
It's a big purchase, it's a big deal. Trevor Shaw knows exactly how you feel for refinance or a new home. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan.
Hello, I'm Trevor Shaw. I'm not just a bluegrass aficionado. I'm a bluegrass aficionado that's a mortgage loan officer at Chat Mortgage in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'd be honored for the opportunity to help you get your residential mortgage loan or refinance anywhere in Tennessee and Georgia. From veterans using their hard-earned benefits to first-time home buyers needing down payment assistance to retirees finally getting the home they've always dreamed of. Call or text me today at 864-50-T-SHAW. That's 864-50-T-SHAW.
It's a big purchase, it's a big deal. Trevor Shaw knows exactly how you feel for refinance or a new home. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan.
Chat Mortgage is powered by Almeida Mortgage Corporation, NMLS number 271603. Chat Mortgage is located at 6650 East Brainerd Road, Suite 208 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Phone number 423-591-9801. Trevor Shaw, NMLS number 929381.